groups or our channels. Happy to do that. But tonight we got someone great, probably someone many of you know. He's a product manager, coach, advisor, been involved in Agile forever. He loves technology. And tonight he's going to chat a little bit about teams and how we organize those teams for better customer-focused outcomes. This is Anthony Marter.
Okay, so if you came along tonight, you may not have realised it, but I'm enlisting you on my crusade to create more agile product teams that don't suck. Is everyone up for that? Yes, excellent, yes, great. Sorry, I came in here and like the people at Les Mills were like yelling and screaming. I'm like, I have to get that energy going in this room. Right, so I love technology except when it doesn't work. All right, so as you said, my name is Anthony Marter. I'm product advisor and coach. Most recently, Chief Product Officer at Solar Zero, which will be relevant in the talk coming up. You'll see why. I've been coaching product teams and practices for a long time. I've been a product manager for like longer than I care to think about. But I've been involved in Agile. I think my first Agile transformation was like 2011 or something, which feels like a really long time ago now. And some of the stuff that I realised around at that time were, they planted the seeds of sort of where I am now and what I'm talking to you about tonight. I'm also the organiser for Product Tank Auckland. We are a meetup group for product managers and people adjacent to product. We have an event coming up, hopefully on the 24th of June. There will be a more formal announcement about that soon. I just haven't quite sorted out the venue yet. I'm also chair of Product Aotearoa, which is an organisation that we've set up to bring together product and product adjacent people across New Zealand. We have a couple of really interesting events coming up, which I'll talk about at the end. Right, okay. What does Agile really mean? This is what it means to me. So Principle 5 is the one that resonates most for me. Build products, it's not cool to talk about projects anymore, build products around motivated individuals, give them the environment and the support they need and the trust to get the job done, which to me translates really simply. Give a bunch of smart people a problem to solve, a customer problem to solve, and let them do it. So that's my fundamental unit of organisation, a group of people who can just are empowered to get stuff done for a customer. So we've got this group of really excited individuals. We've been reading all this stuff about empowered product teams and whatnot, and our teams are all empowered and they're all happy and enthusiastic, and they've got this fantastic product manager who's leading them off to victory. But if we zoom out in our organisation, it looks something like this. They're sitting off in the tech digital kind of corner of the world, and they're all excited and empowered, but they're kind of sitting off to only one part of the organisation. But our customers, in this case, let's assume that we're working for a grocery company who will remain nameless. Our customers are receiving the output of all of those teams, but our highly empowered customer problem-solving team is off hidden in tech. So let's talk about customer journeys for a moment. So typically this is a grocery customer journey. So our customer is preparing a shopping list on their phone, and so they set up that shopping list, and then they go to the shop and they pull stuff off the shelf and they're ticking things off as they go along, and then they go to pay. Or perhaps they're ordering it online and that person comes to them with that item. So we have this notion of a customer journey. And say we want to change something in that customer journey. So say we want to change the initial part of that journey. So we're going to be crossing over a whole bunch of different areas. And there's going to be a lot of different parts of the organisation who are going to be involved in that. If we're doing stuff to do with delivery, it's going to be like supply chain. It's going to be maybe changes in the app. We might have to be working with the people in the store. There's going to be all the stuff that's necessary to be done in order to actually change that thing, iterate whatever it is we're going to do for the customer. And how do we do it? How do we get stuff done around here? Well, here's an org chart. And, we've got these silos, we've got these different verticals. Everyone's organised in these different verticals. Which means that, okay, so our org chart tells us how we get stuff done, right? Because that's our fundamental unit of organisation. Really? Every single organisation I've ever worked for, part of the reason why I became a product manager in the first place, to get anything done for a customer inevitably involved some kind of collaboration across the different areas. Most of us who got into product got there because we were the ones totally ignoring the org chart because we had something we needed to get done for a customer, and we would go and grab somebody from our supply chain area, we grab somebody from technology, we grab somebody from sales, smash their heads together and go, right, actually we're trying to get something done for a customer. I don't care where you sit in the organisation chart. I don't care how your function works. We've got this customer problem to solve. If you ever want to find somebody who's got the talent for being a product manager, that's the skill set to look for within the organisation. And what I really want to argue is that if we're organising ourselves around these functional silos, how the heck can we possibly call ourselves customer-centric? Like, our fundamental unit of organisation has nothing to do with the customer journey. The bit that, our customer doesn't care that sales is a different team to tech, or even tech, itself might have different silos within it, maybe mobile and back-end, however your organisation is organised. Customer doesn't give a damn about that. They just want the outcome of all of those things. And yet we organise ourselves around these functions. Like, how does that even make sense? Everybody in the room, do you work for an organisation who does not call themselves customer-centric? Put your hand up if you do not call yourself customer-centric. Exactly right. So all of our organisations call ourselves this, but we all implement these functional silos. So we need to do something about this. What could we possibly do about it? Right. Well, maybe there's a safe answer to the problem. Maybe, we've got this big complex thing, it's supposed to be all about scaling Agile, we all get together and do our big room planning. It's fascinating how ChatGPT really messes with words in there. That's supposed to say scale Agile for a big room planning. This fantastic big room planning. Well, maybe not actually, because again, that's often the digital side of the business. Or in some organisations, we might actually have Agile within those individual functions. We're starting to see the rise of Agile HR and Agile marketing and so on and so forth. But they're all sitting within their own individual areas and sort of spinning their wheels. We're not oriented around the customer or the customer journey. And so we get mired in this web of dependencies. You have to see this because I had to see this. I asked ChatGPT to create an image of a spider as a product manager. That's what it came up with. It's very disturbing. But that probably indicates the level of disturbance I have with dependencies. In my mind, the best dependency is one that does not exist, one that we don't have to manage this flow of work between different departments. That's just straight out waste. It doesn't help our customers at all. That's our internal dysfunction that we're trying to manage here. And it's funny because I've had this conversation with particularly large organisations, and I say, right, the best dependency is one that doesn't exist. And the people inside those organisations look at me like I'm a space alien. Like, well, what do you mean? There's always dependencies. Well, what if there wasn't? Like, what if we could change ourselves around to try and fix that problem? And then this is the thing that, particularly us as product managers, and coming back to what I talked about earlier on about my very early experience with Agile, is I started to ask myself, like, my incentives and how I measure and the metrics I'm trying to get done for a customer sit across all of these different areas. We've got, this is our customer journey here, we've got the different areas of the organisation it impacts. I'm measured on things like conversion rates and stuff like that, but how does that customer conversion rate fall out across the silos? It's like little bits everywhere. How on earth can you actually measure and incentivize your people around getting stuff done for a customer if it kind of falls out like this? And I've seen all sorts of ridiculous incentive schemes that try and solve that problem. You can, well, let's actually just get rid of the problem. Like, let's just not do things this way. And again, near and dear to my heart as a product person, will the real product manager stand up? So on our left here, so this, taking a bank as an example, on the left here, we've got our product manager for the loan product. And on the right, we've got our product owner for the app. But our product manager for the loan product, that gets delivered pretty much entirely digitally. It's very rare to kind of get a product from a bank that isn't delivered digitally. So our guy on the left is absolutely dependent on the woman on the right because he can't deliver his stuff without her involvement. So who's actually owning the customer journey in that point? Is it our loan product person or is it our app product owner? Very, very, very common in banking. Like I see this replicated across most of the banks. And it's really hard as particularly I've been that person as on the app side of it and gone, I should be incentivized based on the stuff that the customer's actually getting. Like, they're not getting the app. They don't use the app for the sake of using the app. They use the app for the sake of checking their balances. They use the app for the sake of applying for a loan, a mortgage, whatever. All the stuff we hear about, like jobs to be done, like the customer has a job to be done, but that job to be done generally doesn't nicely map into the organization. It maps across all these different areas. So this is me enlisting you on my quest. There must be a better way, right? There's a better way? You think? Yes? Yay, good. Okay, you believe in me. Fantastic, that's good. Haven't finished yet. See if we still have the same opinion at the end. So coming back to our principle. Give a smart bunch of people the customer problem and let them solve it. How do we actually create that structure in our organisation? How do we get ourselves all rowing in the same direction? The more disturbing ChatGPT imagery. Now I've got a Greenpeace symbol there because how I kind of really have the genesis of this talk and how I really sort of started to formulate ideas about how we need to change our organisations was when I was consulting prior to taking on the CPO role at Solid Zero. I started working with them and on how they're structured and how they get stuff done. Immediately noticed the problem that I'm talking about. I've most recently been working with foodstuffs, exactly the same thing, very deep silos, technology, supply chain, store operations, Exactly the same thing in Solid Zero. They had the technology, the software team, they had the engineering team that looks after hardware, they had sales, marketing, support, And I was talking to the founder, amazing guy, invariably working in solar, he's ex-Greenpeace. And I'm talking about these concepts of, cross-functional squads, like how can we get people working cross-functionally across the silos. And he said, oh, yeah, that kind of feels familiar. I used to work he used to be part of Greenpeace for quite a long time. Greenpeace don't have a boats department and a protest department and a yellow government ministers department. They just have, right, here's a problem. Let's go fix overfishing in the North Sea. And here's some money to do it. Go figure it out. And of course they have people who manage boats and, organise protests and whatnot. But ultimately it's here's the problem. Here's a group of people who are keen to solve that problem. Here's some money. Go figure it out. And that was what got my thinking around how to fix this problem across the line with them. Because he went, for normal, ordinary thinking organisations kind of behave like that. It's like, here's a problem, let's go fix it. So what does that look like? Well, what we're doing is we're flipping the org chart on its side. Rather than being oriented around the silos, let's actually get fully cross-functional squads. And for those of you who work on the technology domain in particular, I don't mean, let's get an engineer and a QA working together. Yeah, that's cross-functional, but that's not the level that I'm talking about here. Let's get sales, let's get marketing, let's get customer support, operations, tech. Let's get them all together and actually working on that customer problem. This gets rid of issues like, marketing throwing tech under the bus because, we can't, tech doesn't have enough capacity, or that's too hard. If you actually get people together working as a squad, they start to empathise with each other. And so that really gets you into a far more efficient, effective way of working. There's no longer this interdepartmental throwing stuff over the wall that goes on if you orient yourself like this. What does that look like? Well, for anybody who's familiar with the concept of value streams, I'm pretty much talking about value streams. This is not a new concept. I did not discover this by any stretch of the imagination. Interestingly, one of these books I've been meaning to read for ages and ages and ages, finally got around to reading it a little while ago, and I thought it was all about, projects and why they're bad and how products are better and whatnot. No, it's actually all about value streams. If you're interested in this stuff, strongly recommend that book. And one of the examples they use in the book is car manufacturer BMW. They actually orient their factories around this kind of way of working. They do bring in these kind of cross-functional things. Now, I won't spoil it for anyone, read the book if you want to know more about that. But for organisations that are doing big stuff at scale, this is purely possible. One of the things I found with working with a large grocery organisation, I started to look at it and go, oh my God, this organisation is a super tanker. I was talking to them about these concepts coming up 4 years ago now, And I'm just starting to hear maybe in the last sort of 12 to 18 months that they're starting to pick up some of those ideas. One of the reasons I joined Solar Zero was because much smaller organisation, we felt like actually we can make a difference really quickly because we can reorganise and reorient ourselves around these kind of principles. Okay, so we gave this notion of sliced cross-functional teams. How do we slice them up? Because you've got this giant customer journey. Customer journeys are long. Often there are actually multiple journeys in there. You know, you can't have one squad that's across the entire journey usually. It's just simply too big. How do you slice it up? Typical product answer, it depends. But the idea is that you want to try and find some points in that journey. And I'll come to an example in a bit about how we did it at Solar Zero. But you want to try and find some slice. Team topologies is a great reference for thinking about how to slice stuff up. You know, this very much fits into the notion of stream aligned team. You know, stream, value stream, that's where the word comes from. Value stream aligned team. And you know, team topologies talks about it in the context of technology organizations, but really it is agnostic of the type of stuff that you're doing. The same principles very much aligned with products that are not just purely technology. The notion of platforms and enabling teams also exist in that world as well. So that's provided me with a lot of inspiration about how we could slice up the customer journey. Functions and practices still matter though. Like, I'm not taking away from the fact, you know, we set up these functional silos because we want to be really good at sales. We want to be really good at marketing. We want to be really good at technology. That is actually still important. We have to solve our customer problem. We have to be really good at that because that's how we make money. But those internal practices still actually matter. So by moving away from those functional silos, I'm by no means suggesting that the function itself is not important. This is a really important thing to communicate when you introduce this kind of thinking into an organisation, because everybody freaks out and goes, yeah, but we get together in a sales team for a reason. Like, yep, you do, and that is still really, really, really important, but ultimately we still have to get stuff done for the customer. So let's dive into a real-world example. So, like I said, I work for Solar Zero, and I'm still working with them in my consulting role. We install solar, we do solar as a subscription. This means that we not only look after the customer through their initial part of their journey, we also look after them over, we have a subscription product, we look after them over 25 years as well. And so our customer journey is actually really, really, really long. And it's complicated. Getting solar on somebody's roof is like really, really complicated, really expensive as well. So we had to start with slicing somewhere, so we sliced our journey around customer acquisition, basically our funnel down to the point of sale. There's a lot going on in there, and so the product manager there is thinking about things like conversion metrics, about, we're particularly close with marketing at that point, because obviously we want marketing to kind of bring people into the funnel. Quite close with our sales team, because they're the ones who are actually doing the work and all of that. There's a lot of, because we work in an environment which is quite complicated, we do a lot of training as well, so we've got training people involved in that area. And then installation and activation. So getting solar on somebody's roof is a pretty complex product. There's a whole sub-journey sitting inside that of installation and installers. You know, what is the journey for our installers? So we set up a squad around that. And then once we've got the system on the roof, we then want to look after the customer for the duration of that. And again, there are multiple sub-journeys in that. We have a relatively simple journey there right now. As we mature, there's going to be a lot more cool and interesting stuff. So we might slice that LTV journey out further. There might be other products that we can. Sitting underneath all of that, this is where we start to get into the team topologies kind of thinking, is the notion of a couple of platform teams. So we have these teams at the top, which fit the team topologies model of stream-aligned teams, because they're aligned to a value stream, a customer value stream. And then platform teams. So sitting in one part is, it's not if you call this, but it simply is the area that looks after our hardware, our platforms, and sort of our power plants. We have a virtual power plant. We can actually network all the batteries together across the country. When New Zealand was running out of power the other week, we actually injected power from those batteries. We actually literally kept the lights on the South Island, which is pretty cool. But that's obviously quite complicated stuff, and so we have an area that's dedicated to that. And then we have our software technology platform, Salesforce, Xero, AWS, Copilot stuff in there. So those are the notion of platform type teams. So they're not directly aligned to a customer value stream. The value stream teams are kind of the customer of those areas. So they are producing stuff that are being consumed by those value stream teams. How did that work? Okay, so what worked? We delivered some really complex product iterations. We actually introduced, as I mentioned, we do subscription. We actually introduced a upfront purchase product late last year. That was my baby. I took that one to market. We also made some really complicated, probably historically complicated changes to the way that our product works. There was some pricing, there was some new panel types and whatnot. Really, really complicated. Again, I was talking about before, lots of moving parts across the organisation. And our acquisition team worked on that because it's primarily part of the customer acquisition part of the funnel. We had very minimal dependency management. We weren't mired in doing massive amounts of dependencies because we had this one group of people all working directly with each other. There was no notion of, we need to wait for marketing to do this because we had the marketing person actually working with the squad. She was just working directly with the stuff that people needed from her. We had really good buy-in to the outcomes because, again, you had one group of people just trying to get one thing done. And so, there was no notion of like a function who's thinking about, I'm working on this thing, and I'm working on that thing, and I'm working on this other thing, and like none of them was singly important to me. We had this group of people who were working together towards that particular customer outcome. And a really good sense of one team. One of the sort of underlying motives of all of this was to try and break down some barriers between our marketing and product, between product and tech, between training and sales in particular, and some of the other areas. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to break down those barriers. So everyone was really engaged in that. And this actually continued when we released to market as well, because one of the things I really enjoyed, particularly with our cash product, is I had the delivery lead and the BA and a couple of tech guys sitting in a room with the salespeople brainstorming ideas. There was a few little awkward things as we went to market, and really they were supporting each other with how we were selling, and it was getting our more product-oriented part of the business really aligned with our more sales-oriented part of the business, because they were actually sitting there looking at sales happening, listening to customer calls, helping the sales guys who were actually working directly with the customer. Really brought those groups together. It was really, really good. But it wasn't all easy. I'd love to say that it was all unicorns and rainbows, but it was not. So what was hard? Getting started was actually really hard. Actually just getting this group of people. One of the things I have to be really careful of is, as a product manager, I'm used to thinking cross-functionally. Like I think about I start with the customer outcome and then work backwards to kind of like where it's going to affect the organisation. Not everybody thinks like that. People who are sitting within their particular silo will think about that function. It's the way that they've been sort of set up to think about. Unfortunately, we're not building the organisation from scratch like this. It is a transformational journey. And actually getting people to start thinking that way, to think beyond their area, was pretty tough and continues to be tough. To be honest, this is not a battle that we've won fully in the organisation. There are still people who forget that the thing impacts marketing or their thing impacts a salesperson. And we have to kind of remind people and whatnot. So it is a bit of a constant journey of reinforcement. We're a small organisation. It's not a big company. There were, and it's particularly true in our marketing area, where we had one marketing person who was actually working across multiple squads, simply because there was only one of her, and we couldn't just add more headcount in there. Didn't have the budget for it. So that was a challenge, but that's always a challenge. You have roles in technology. You'll probably be used to architects who need to work across multiple different teams. It's the same kind of problem, but writ large across the organisation. UX is often a shared responsibility as well. That was not easy, but there's no easy answer for it. There was a wonderful Agile Auckland talk at 2 Degrees. When was it, Ziggy? Was it earlier this year, I think? Yeah. I can't remember. Yeah. And they're doing a similar thing, so they're bringing in this notion of value streams there as well. And I went and had a chat with the lady who was doing the talk afterwards to sort of say, well, how did you approach the cross-squad problem? How did you approach this notion of, people are really caring about their function, but they're also having to work on across different areas as well? And she's like, yeah, it wasn't a problem for us because we just have different people. Fine, big organisations, it's a bit easier. Small organisations, this stuff is kind of hard. And it's also hard because of specialisation. So again, using our marketing area as an example, we have one person who's primarily focused on the lead side of things and how we get leads and who our lead partners are. We have another person who's primarily focused on digital marketing. Another person who's focused on the data side of the marketing team. And for them to work with the squads, we kind of needed a little bit of all of them. And so what that meant is that we ended up with a little bit of a model where the person who was involved in the lead side of things, she was also the person who'd been in the team the longest. She would kind of be responsible kind of for those areas who weren't necessarily her thing, like the digital marketing thing, but she served as the interface into the marketing team. So when we needed something from the digital marketing side, she would take it upon herself to then work with the person who was in digital marketing to get that thing done. So that was the way we solved it, but it's still pretty tough. That specialization problem is a pretty tough one to solve. The other thing was balancing BAU with the squad work. I mean, we started to talk about this notion of building the business versus running the business. So our marketing team has to run marketing campaigns. Our sales team have to sell. They're on the phones every day to people. Our HR people, they have got day-to-day stuff. Our training people, they were running daily. At that point, we were hiring a lot of people, so they were running day-to-day training stuff for new people. And at the same time, we were asking them to work on building the business, which is the new products, the new things, the new changes, new iterations that we're putting through. That was a kind of tough thing to do, and it was pretty hard. Particularly it turned out to be hardest in our sales area because they're a team that runs really hard. Like they're a great team, they work really, really, really hard. But to get them out of the day-to-day and really engaging with the new product stuff was tough because what they were used to a model where they would get involved at the end. And that of course, came with its own set of problems. Things were thrown over the wall, they would complain, oh, why have you not thought of us? So we need to pull them forward. But they're so overwhelmed with the workload that they had on just doing the day-to-day that they struggled to get out of the day-to-day and actually devote time to doing this. That was actually really hard, particularly that area. And kind of my conclusion about that particular problem is that T-shaped people are absolutely essential to making this work, particularly in a small organisation. Perhaps less so in a larger organisation, as I said, that 2 Degrees example, where they had the luxury of having people who they could dedicate to the day-to-day and dedicate to the build the business kind of work. But in a smaller organisation, which let's face it is most of New Zealand, that T-shaping is super, super, super important. Does everyone in the room know what I mean when I say T-shaping? Put your hand up. No? Okay. I'll look at some, but no, it's not so. So T-shaping is the notion of I'm good at one particular thing, so that's I-shape. I am really, really, really good at software engineering. I can do that. Or I'm really, really good at marketing, or really, really good at product, but I don't yet go beyond that. T-shaping is where you're starting to extend your skill set. So I'm really, really, really good at product, but I know enough about marketing, or I know about in the marketing, coming back to that example, I'm really, really good at lead management, but I know enough about digital marketing to kind of be able to talk in a squad and work about that. Or I know enough about the data side that I can kind of talk to that as well. I might not be an expert, and I can bring the person in who is an expert, but I know enough about it to be dangerous. There's also the notion of E-shaped people. So if take an E and capital E, turn it on its side, this is where a person starts to develop multiple specializations. I would probably count myself in that. I come from a software engineering background. I'm hopefully good at coding, but I haven't done it for a very long time. Good at product, good at UX. So over time, as we get old, we start to develop these other specializations as well. It's a really essential thing to making this work because in those cross-functional squads, you need people who care about the adjacencies, who care about the other parts of the function. Otherwise, it all falls apart. If people fall back into that silo thinking, but this is what I do, I don't care about the other stuff, it doesn't work. And it is really hard. It's especially hard doing this inside an existing organisation because particularly a large organisation, because you will invariably have a lot of I-shaped people. One of the perennial question in product around product discovery is a product manager complaining, oh, my engineer never wants to be involved in product discovery. They never want to come along to a customer conversation. They just want to write code. Great example of an I-shaped person right there. As a product manager, I want that engineer to actually care about customer stuff because that's ultimately who they're writing code for. But they don't need to be an expert in customer interviews and customer dynamics. We have user research, we have product managers to do that kind of stuff. So what I want, the engineers who I enjoy working with most are the ones who know enough about those kind of areas to be dangerous, but are also really amazing at coding as well. Again, coming back to my own personal bias as a product manager, and I think it just does apply to Agile people, particularly if you're looking more broadly across the organisation. I just take it for granted that everybody is T-shaped. Why would you not care about these other areas of the organisation? it is really, really easy to ignore the fact that a lot of people just want to do their work within their function, because that's the way that their organisation's been set up. It's the way that we've structured organisations ever since Taylorism was a thing, ever since the basic management structures, going back to the 20s and 30s, and where it has its roots. We've been structuring our organisations around functional stuff for a very, very, very long time. However, we're moving into a world where, particularly in technology organisations, where the way that you do technology, if you do the best tech, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win as an organisation. You're going to win by providing a better customer experience, solving the customer problem better than anyone else. And that will invariably involve more than just a bit of cool, amazing technology. So, my view is that T-shaping is absolutely essential, both to success in the sort of modern world of modern ways of working, but also to making this whole thing work as well. And one other notion I wanted to mention, and this has become particularly apparent when I moved into an exec role, as in a leadership role around the exec team, is that particularly at that level, you have to think of yourself as being part of the business first and part of your function second. So it's, I've had to noodle on things like, do we have enough money to pay our people? Big, scary, existential things. Why is our sales pipeline broken? We've got an issue with the sales in this particular month. What the hell is going on? That's not part of my core role as a chief product officer. But actually, if we don't fix those problems, there's no point doing the most amazing product in the world. So you do have to think of yourself as being part of the business first and part of your function second. And that applies, in my opinion, at all levels of the business as well. It's no good we deliver the most amazing software in the world if our sales pipeline is fundamentally broken, because we're going to run out of money and you're going to be out of a job. There's just no point doing that. So this notion does apply, and we sort of ignore it and isolate ourselves from it. We hope that somebody else has got it. But as I said, particularly when you move into a leadership role, you suddenly realise that nobody else has got it, you have to. I'm spending a lot of time noodling on sales journeys right now, just a relevant point. And I touched on this a wee bit earlier, this notion of build versus run. A sort of picture there. We've got all these people around, frantically working the machine, and we've got some people actually building the machine. How do we get the right balance there? What is the right balance between building it, making a new future for our business, growing, doing new cool stuff, responding to customer demand, and actually just keeping the lights on, keeping shipping, pumping out product, however it is that you do product, whether it's keeping your servers going, whether it's keeping your SaaS platforms going, whether it's selling another solar system. There's this operational tempo that every organisation has. So how do you get that right balance between people functioning on that as well as people who are functioning on building the business? And the answer very much is not to separate those, because one of the, as I was saying earlier on, that example of when we introduced our cash product, there was a real sense of positivity around getting people who are involved in building the business with people who are running the business, because they felt like they cared about each other. That one of the most toxic things you can have in an organisation is if people who are running the business feel like the people who are building the next thing don't care about them. That's just absolutely toxic. Business will fail every time that happens. So one of the benefits of this kind of way of working is it naturally brings those groups together. But you have to think about it deliberately. This is where I thought it would just work. One of my key learnings was that we had to be more deliberate about how we actually went about getting the people who were running the business involved with building the business. Just going, hey, I just need some people's time was not enough. So this all sounds really hard. Where do I get started? Well, I was fortunate enough to be invited into a business to make this change. That doesn't happen very often. Very fortunate. To get this kind of thinking going in your organisation, this is how I was approaching it with another organisation, was that I'm not actually going to tell you tomorrow, look, we need to restructure ourselves, we need to create these cross-functional squads, we need to change everything. It's like, okay, well, we've got this sort of informal group of people already working on things in our organisation. Can we just, help them and maybe make that a slightly more formal thing? Call it a working group, call it a cross-functional steering committee, whatever. Make this informal grouping just a little bit more formal, and that will get you off the ground without upsetting the people who think about organizational structures and, oh my God, you're going to change everything, and oh, I run this giant fiefdom in my functional silo and you're challenging my existence. That's real, particularly in large organizations. Start to recognize that informal grouping of people, because it exists. I will absolutely guarantee in your organization that informal group of people working together cross-functionally, ignoring the silos, exists in your organization. Unless you're really lucky and you work in complete value streams and it's all amazing and unicorns and rainbows, that structure exists. Think about how you can recognize it a little bit more, just a little bit more. And then when people start to go, oh, I really enjoy working in this cross-functional model because it gets me really close to the customer. It's like, maybe we should make a bit more change in our organisation to recognise that and eke it out bit by bit. One way of doing it. In a large organisation, potentially the only way of doing it, short of, as we were talking about earlier on, use another restructure. And I know, for example, that Spark are actually starting to produce some of these concepts here, and they're doing it through a restructure. That's another way of doing it. So, bit of a call to action for everyone. So we started at the beginning, right? So is everyone still on this journey? Are we still keen to kind of make this change? Yes? Yay? Okay. So here's some homework for you. Map your customer journeys. The number one way that when I start working with an organisation who's kind of interested in this way of thinking is to actually get the customer journey mapped out somewhere. Pick a large wall in your organisation. Don't ask for permission. Maybe you have to do this after 5 o'clock. Start mapping out all of the bits of the customer journey and how they connect with each other. And it gets people thinking that, oh, I'm not just working on this piece of software over here. This piece of software actually sits in the customer, pops up in our customer journey here, pops up in our customer journey here. But guess what? I'm dependent on other people in there. And it starts to get people thinking that, actually there's a world outside our silo. It's the customer and the journey that they take with us that really matters. That's the thing that pays the bills. And then maybe think a little bit about, what slices would actually matter? Where could we kind of slice that up? As I was just talking about, what's your unit of getting stuff done? And I don't mean the org chart or the function. I mean actually getting stuff done for a customer. What is your fundamental unit? And is there something in there that you can leverage to start getting people to think about these kind of things? And that really moves on to what informal structures already exist around that you can help to kind of power up and leverage off of those. That's your homework. A couple of other things that I just wanted to end on. So as I mentioned, I represent Product Aotearoa. We bring together product people and adjacent product people. Agile people are most welcome to come along. We have our next conference coming up on the 19th of July. The tickets are not expensive. It's a fully online event because we bring together people from across New Zealand. We have attendees from Christchurch, Wellington and Auckland and across the provinces and whatnot. It's an unconference format, so you can throw a topic up. You can come along and say, hey, I heard Anthony talking about this value stream stuff. Help me understand how might that work in my organisation. And you'll get a bunch of opinionated people having a discussion. So coming up on 19th of July, tickets are available now. And we ran the very first product management conference in New Zealand late last year. We sold out, much to our shock. We would have been happy just to get 100 people in the room. So it was really popular. We are planning another one coming up in November. If you are interested, we have a pre-registration form. If you register there, you get informed about ticket releases and whatnot. Right, and that's me. A whole bunch of QR codes there. I'd really love to connect with people about this. As I'm working in a sort of a consulting role right now, but actually I don't necessarily want to monetize this. I want to help product teams suck less, because then I don't have product managers crying to me about how hard their job is, and we have a lot more engaged people. So this is just something I'm super passionate about. So that's my LinkedIn profile. I promise it's not a rickroll. Please connect with me. I'd love to chat. If this is something that you think you'd like to get going in your organisation, I would really love to have a coffee with you and about how we can kind of scheme ways to make this happen. And those are the conference and conference links as well. Right, that's me. Any questions? Oh, amazing, awesome.
Okay, the question is around the trust. I think, one of the factors that product teams don't suck is, what I think from my experience is the trust. So what is the best way to bring the trust in, not only from point of view, like the people that we are working with, but from the management perspective as well, how to convince them, okay, this is the best way to move ahead and to take their buyout and their wishes and also to take the team along with us.
Easy question. Thank you for starting with the hardest question. And I know you attended my talk on commercial stuff. So as I mentioned in the LinkedIn post I've done about this, in some ways this is a bit of a companion talk. I did a talk the other week at Product Tank Auckland around the commercial side of product management. And this aligns very strongly with the commercial side because as I was talking about that connection between metrics and how we structure ourselves is really tough when there's a misalignment between the metrics that are customer journey oriented and our teams, which are not customer journey oriented. So in terms of ways to start getting trust and buy-in around that, what's worked for me is to highlight that. It's like, okay, well, our metric is on customer conversion, but actually we have all these different areas kind of feeding into that. That's really interesting, and that's also, customer conversion is the thing that really makes us money. Should we maybe think about, how do we get our people more involved in the things that make us money? Oh, they actually have to get together across the functions in order to make us money. Yay, we're starting to get somewhere with our conversations. And one of the key topics of that previous talk was that we have to care about money now more than ever. There's lots of restructuring, lots of downsizing going on. If you do not know your connection as an individual to how your company makes money, you're really at risk. If I can see you another piece of homework, go and figure out how your work connects to your company making money. The easiest way to link that is if your organisational structure fundamentally connects it. So that's another way that I've kind of got buy-in from executive teams, is sort of saying, well, we've got all these people who are busily working away. If they were better connected to how we actually make money and stay alive as an organisation, maybe we might be more efficient. Because as I mentioned, that very scary dependency spider, all of that dependency is a waste of money. Organisation that will remain nameless, who very much suffered from this particular problem, not Solve Zero, that I estimated that around about half, and I was told this was a conservative estimate, it's probably more than half of the things that their technology team built did not ultimately offer any value to the organisation because they weren't adopted across the other areas of the business. And this is an organisation with very large budgets. That half represented a very large number, double-digit millions. So, that should be pretty convincing to management. Hey, if we fix some of this, maybe we can increase the value of what we do. We actually have people working on more valuable stuff because they're more connected to the outcome and everybody's pulling in the same direction. Yeah, everybody's shooting off in different directions. So ridiculously expensive. So ridiculously expensive. And then also just finding analogies. Like I said, I lucked out with the founder at Solar Zero. He recognised this and stuff that he'd done previously. So it's also what is the leadership? How does the leadership minds work? What concepts are going to resonate with them? Talking about, hey, let's have a small group of people who can just get stuff done. That does tend to resonate because it's like, oh yeah, well, why would we not have a small group of people who can just get stuff done? Like, stupid, right? But we organise ourselves so that doesn't happen. So yeah, but it's the hardest problem. Like getting started with this is the hardest problem. And like I said, it can be quite a confronting conversation to have with leadership because you're essentially saying we're going to take the entire organisation, rip it apart, change all the structures and restructure, and that's terrifying to a lot of people. So hence why my suggestion is look for those informal structures.
How do you manage overwhelm during that teething process?
That was tough. Honestly, that was the hardest thing. And as I'll use the Solve Zero sales team. Like they were just super busy. Like they're an amazing group of people, but they've got really high sales quotas to make. You sort of have to say, well, what's the counterfactual to not being involved? So if sales is not involved in the development of a new product, then what will happen is the scar tissue will get exercised more than they've had previously, where they've had stuff thrown over the wall to them. So it's about thinking about what are the incentives to get involved. Coming back to the question around leadership, sometimes you just have to work with leadership to free that time up. Sort of saying, right, actually, we're just going to, it's the classic slow down to speed up kind of conversation around, actually, we need to take a little bit of a breath here with these people and let them get involved in the new product development. Otherwise, our new product development is going to fail. Coming down to that waste comment that I was just talking about before, actually freeing those people up might cost us some sales numbers in the short term, but the size of the prize later on is much, much, much bigger. But again, that is also a very, very difficult conversation. You have to pick your battles as well. I very much pick my battles in the organisation about who I put pressure on to get involved in the cross-functional squads in some areas versus like, nah, that's just not going to work.
Did you engage any organizational change management officially in this process? Leveraging that ADKAR model, awareness, desire. It's pretty tectonic shift.
Yeah, yes and no. No, I didn't. I mean, it's kind of what they hired me to be the organisational change manager person, well, CEO, all of other things, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But one of I actually to be perfectly blunt and honest, I underestimated the need for change management because I just assumed, again, small organisation, everybody said, "Hey, we love this idea. This is really great. We all want to work like this." And when the rubber hit the road, it was an awful lot harder. So I will have to say, if you're doing this, please do more change management stuff than I did. Selling that vision constantly, selling the way of working, stopping backsliding in different areas. It's a lot of work, and you have to be up for it. You have to realise, I think, to the point you're highlighting, that this is a change management, and it's a whole of organisation, particularly in a larger organisation. I think being aware of it, I think is probably the thing. If you don't have if you don't have the budget or the humans to kind of bring in to work on it, you're going to have to figure out ways of getting people to help you with that.
I think we had a question.
Yeah, it was more just to understand the difference between this and, say, like your PAs, programs going out to your stakeholders and asking them and doing those sessions with them, compared to this where you sort of bring them into the team. Surely just going to them as stakeholders, not taking them out of their function as the sales team or whatever, is more efficient.
I would argue the opposite.
You're the expert. I'm
not the expert, and this is very much an experiential kind of thing. My experience has been that where people feel, where you go out, get a bunch of people, come back, go out, you get viewed as the conduit, and classic product manager thing, you become the conduit, you're sort of the expert everywhere.
Yeah.
But you're fully bought into this new thing that you're building. Those people, they've had that conversation with you, particularly if you're a more senior stakeholder, they've forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And then you come along, it's at 100% happened, come along later, right, we're going to change this thing. What the? You're talking about we're going to change it? No, we can't touch it. So, but hang on a minute, we had that conversation with you 3 months ago, you were fine with it then. Yeah. People forget, so it's about making that grouping that first class. Everybody is in that change day to day, they're working together day to day around it. They're radiating out to their leaders as well. It also reduces communication overhead massively, because you don't need to force that communication. You don't need to remember to inform the stakeholder of functional practice X, because hopefully the person in your squad is just doing that as part of their day-to-day.
Yeah.
That was hard, by the way, actually getting people to run that communication back into their functions was actually quite tough. It didn't work as well as we.
Communication business is pretty poor already, isn't it?
Yeah.
They don't talk to each other.
And again, lesson learned, I would have perhaps been a bit more deliberate about those communication flows, I think. But good question. We are so used to that model of requirements gathering and whatnot and working around. As I said, buy-in and just waste, just the overhead of having someone actually having to do that, as opposed to it just happening organically, and the BA being able to work on far more value-adding stuff like future strategy and things like that, freeing them up from that running around and being the cat herder. Hashtag no cat herding, I think, if I was to put a label on this. It's about, rather than actually us trying to fight with the cats, actually the cats are in a channel and they're just going. We don't have to worry about trying to keep them constantly on track. Some of them are going to leap over invariably because they're cats. But it's about making that sort of, we're all moving in the same direction, a first-class part of the organisation structure. So many hands. Who am I going to pick next? Actually, I'll go to the back. So somebody had your hand up there? There we go. That was you.
So my question is around value stream. So
yes.
If we talk about a value stream and there's a streamline team to deliver for that, is it fair to expect for them to have all the capabilities to be able to deliver the value stream? Or do they still need to go out to other teams like platform teams to be able to get some work done?
I'll fall back on the classic "it depends" answer. No. With that, you want as many people as is feasible for your organisation having all those skill sets together. But, as I said, particularly in our case, we couldn't have those dedicated people, and so we had to sort of hack about and kind of say, look, okay, this person in the marketing team is going to be sort of working with these squads on these things, and this person's going to be working with these squads on these other things. And so we sort of created a bit of an organisational hack to make that work. Ideal world, everybody's dedicated together, but I don't think, even in a very large organisation, that you will ever get away from having shared resources. And you just have to manage that as best works for your organisation. There's no right or wrong answer there.
Sorry, just a follow-up question to that. So if the value stream is consisting of multiple products, or like it's a segment, there are multiple products under that, and the streamline team, they can't deliver everything for the value stream. So then, what's the point of having the streamline team when they can't cater for the needs?
Again, you want to try and bring as much of that together. Actually, you've just touched on something which I completely forgot to add in my talk, so thank you for asking the question. This also starts to question the notion of what is a product. So, and we still fall into this at Solar Zero. Our product is the solar panels, or our product is the battery that we sell. No, our product is the customer journey. For almost all organisations, the product is a customer journey or a part of the customer journey, because that's the thing that the customer experiences. That's what they're paying for. They're not paying for those individual constituent parts. They're paying for the whole. And so it starts to, really, for me, and I don't actually know, I don't have another word to articulate those other things now. Like, we need to find another word for that, because, the product is that customer journey. The stuff in between is just an enabler, a combination, whatever, so we need to pick a word for it. And if the people working in that value stream don't have full control and full access to that, that's a problem. So mobile app is a classic example. Mobile app will sit across that whole customer journey. But this squad needs to implement something that's related to the first part of the customer journey, the mobile app. This squad over here needs to implement something that's to do with the lifetime value part of the customer journey. In an ideal world, and I will say ideal world, they have the skill set to be able to make simple changes in the app, but they might have a platform team who actually look after the mobile app as a platform. But the incentive for that platform team needs to be not, we have to build everything, like, every time there's a request for something in mobile app, it has to go across, gets us back into that web of dependencies. Their incentive should be, how do we make the mobile app self-serve from a development perspective? How do we enable having, a relatively low-skilled person or lower-skilled person in that team, or maybe a cross-functional person, maybe they're a full-stack developer, be able to make small changes in the app. You want to do something wholesale, you're going to have to get the platform team to do it, but you want to get, break that web of dependencies. And it means that, so your platform team cannot be the gatekeepers of the platform. Their incentive has to be enabling the other teams. They have to enable the teams to self-serve. They cannot gatekeep, otherwise it doesn't work.
How big are these platform teams, and are we talking about moving line management to be a platform team reports to a tribe lead or whatever we call them, or are they still sitting in their functional team?
Really, really good question. Actually, two questions in there. One really is around the notion of the size of a platform team. The other one's line management, and they're kind of connected in some ways. A platform team should be as small as possible and no smaller. Again, it's about empowering those other areas to do stuff. Again, if the platform team is building a fiefdom around that platform, not going to work, because you get back into that dependency mess again. The stream-aligned teams become completely dependent on that platform team. Lots of really good material in the team topologies book that really unpacks the notion of how that platform team should be set up, and it needs to be small, like it cannot be this giant fiefdom. Line management, I've seen multiple different ways of line management working in this kind of structure. The way we did it, line management sits in the function, in the practice sort of side of things. So as I said, those practices are still important. People doing the line management sit across the particular practice. So the marketing people report to the CMO, and she essentially looks after the marketing practice. I have seen that particular model criticised a bit, because what can happen is that the line manager gets quite disconnected from the outcomes that each of the person and individual teams work. And so I've seen, particularly large organisations, I think Xero experimented this with a little while, where the line manager was actually much closer and part of the squad. There are pros and cons to those different approaches, lots of pros and cons, and it's going to depend on the age and stage of the organisation about what's best. How do you ensure good personal development while acknowledging the fact that that person's working with other people from other practices? It's a tough problem to solve.
I was just wondering how many people work at Solar Zero and how many of them are working in this cross-functional team?
Good question. I should have qualified that at the start. So we were about 200. So we grew from about 130 to 200. And so, but a lot of those people were more operationally focused. That they run the business side of things, sales, BDMs, things like that. In terms of the core squads, it was 30, 40-ish, something like that. So reasonable chunk of the organisation, but certainly not the overall part of the organisation. That's why for us, resolving that building the business versus running the business really was a tough thing for us to try and figure out.
Yeah, a couple of comments from my experience. Firstly, where you said people have informal connections from different silos. Well, that to me yells out that organization charts are rarely correct. They're often way removed from being correct because they're based on job titles and lines of control when they should be based on functions and what does this person do and is this what they really need to do. So if he's got an informal connection over here, that should be reflected in his position and the lines that connect all those people. Secondly, if you suddenly tilt your bridge up in the air and make a skyscraper, which is where part of this thinking came from, if you move those 5 or 6 people, you have to remember that's 5 restructured job descriptions that have to be changed. And if you're involved in a dynamic process, you can imagine the HR heading that great. So I always say one of the first places you go to is that line captain and tell him that this person's already functioning over here and we need to deal with that now because we're embarking on this project. And secondly, encourage him to support the functionality of the silo, not the title of the silo, because it's usually quite wrong. The other thing was you will get into situations, especially if you have to use outside people, that regardless of what the rules of the Scrum are, they will run to their own timetable. And finally, I would say that one of the biggest benefits of Scrums and Scrum teams is that people get twice a week exposure to how other people think from other departments, and they become teams very quickly. And they're more sympathetic to what they have to do, and then that develops the team concept.
I very much agree with all of that. Definitely, but you've raised a point which I forgot to talk about in the talk. Thank you guys for helping me refresh the talk for the next version. Is that sorry, I'm losing my train of thought there. The last bit you took.
Team learning?
Yes, Scrums. Thank you. Sorry, there we go. Sorry, there are too many concepts bouncing around my head at the same time. One of our key challenges, which I forgot to put on the slide, was that in that Scrum meeting, so stand-up, the technical people, we had a couple of technical people in one of the squads, they had quite important technical stuff in the QA as well, technology stuff to kind of think about. And the marketing person, that actually wasn't really that relevant to them and relevant and interesting. But sometimes it was. And one of the things we struggled with was how to maintain that balance between actually making sure that everybody was talking together, but also not disrupting things that were actually really important within a specific function and getting that kind of cadence together. I don't think we got it right. We did have problems where the marketing people were like, I'm really bored, the technical people are just talking technology stuff. But what I was also trying to avoid is a situation where the technology person would talk about something, the marketing person would go, hold on. That affects the way that we do email marketing. You need to think about that. That was the sort of the save in there. And so that balance is actually really tough. I don't think we cracked it. It is something that I've had some conversations with some outside people about how organizations kind of do that. It's kind of tough.
A couple of comments there. Firstly, no one, in my view, in a Scrum team has the right to be silent throughout a meeting. And that's up to the Scrum Master who points to them and how does that affect you technically, and they have to say something. Okay, secondly, it's if they're not contributing to the Scrum discussion, they're not building the connections in the team, and it's a team responsibility, so that's critical.
Yeah, that was definitely hard. And actually, again, you've highlighted another thing there. The technology people are very used to working in some kind of agile scrum kind of way. So they're used to the notion of stand-ups and expected behaviour of stand-ups and stakeholders that come from that area, used to that kind of stuff. Marketing people, on the other hand, it's relatively rare. It's starting to become more common as we get agile kind of spreading across different disciplines. But a marketing person's got no idea how to behave at a stand-up. It's not something that they've done for years and years and years, like old people like me have done. And so you actually have to remember you've got these people who are at like wildly different places in their agile journey. I didn't account for that, and that to me again another learning is that if I was doing this again, I would have probably put a bit more scrum and why a cross-functional stand-up is really important and the kind of things to listen out, because I took a whole bunch of stuff for granted.
A little orientation meeting.
Yeah.
Well, how do I
So I think I'll take one more question and then we'll finish.
Okay. So, I mean, the way you describe product, and I'm talking from like a project background, so it looks like it's something that goes all over the organization. Whereas sometimes you have like a specific, task or like value stream that you want to achieve, and I mean, in an organization like where I work, it's a large organization, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of technical work that needs people who are on the job, complete the job, and then jump to the next. So it doesn't involve like touching on customer or. So yeah, how do you bring this frame to an organization like that?
Yeah, good, very good question. Those of you who occasionally I put like ranty posts on LinkedIn. You may have seen one from me a little while ago talking about the fact I don't hate the term projects. As an agile product person, I'm supposed to hate the term projects. I don't. For us, the notion of a project is getting a product from state A to state B. It's the work involved in bringing one together. That's the notion of project. But you've highlighted another really important thing. Sometimes stuff does not need a giant cross-functional beating stick on it, and that can just sit within a function. However, the corollary to that, flip side to that, is that sometimes it does, and it doesn't become apparent until you dive into it that, this is just a small tech. Oh, hang on, I'm going to break all marketing. Oh my god! And so you have to kind of, you do need to have that swim lane ability for a function just to get something done that really exists within it. But you also have to have people making concern to that T-shaping, because you only recognise it when you're T-shaped. That hold on, this is a bigger cross-functional effort, and really it does need to be a first-class project that we work on in the squad. And so your product managers in particular, the people managing those sort of overall squad backlogs, need to be on the lookout for that stuff. So actually, hang on, we need to elevate this thing up. Cool, right.
So round of applause for Anthony. Just wrap things up. I just want to say, anybody